Thank you to Digger and Dealers for this opportunity to share the ASM story with you and to give you an update on the work that we've been progressing since I presented in this forum 12 months ago. For those of you who aren't familiar, Australian Strategic Materials, or ASM, is building a global rare earths and critical minerals business to provide those high-tech metals that are needed for many of the advanced technologies, but in particular to support the clean energy transition. And our strategy is to go from mine all the way through to metals. So that starts with our advanced project in New South Wales, in Dubbo, where once it's in production, we will mine, but we will also separate and refine that polymetallic resource through to a suite of high purity metal oxide products. Those products can either go directly to our customers to go into their supply chain, or alternatively, because predominantly those supply chains don't exist at the moment outside of China, we offer to take it through the next step in the supply chain as well, through one of our metals plants. The first of our metals plants we have built and is in production in South Korea. We are metallising there the neodymium praseodymium metal, or the light rare earth metal, as well as making the specialist alloy, the NdFeB alloy, that is the main constituent of those high-performance magnets that are an essential component of the electric vehicles, the wind turbines, and a lot of the other advanced and clean technologies. The obvious challenge at the moment is I've got a metals plant in production, a project that is advanced but not yet in production, and so where are we getting our feed? We are sourcing our feed from third-party providers, and it is our intention to continue to grow it in order to provide feed in the interim prior to Dubbo coming online, but also in the long term to supplement the feed in order to be able to provide growth opportunities for these metals plants. And we do have a lot of interest as we're talking to our Dubbo offtake parties about potentially expanding or replicating our facility in Korea in other jurisdictions, particularly strong interest in the States and in Europe. We have a very strong executive team and board led by our chair, Mr. Ian Gandel, who's here with us today, also our major shareholder. One of the things that we have done in the last 12 months is bring in some key talent into the executive team. I was very pleased to welcome Chris Jordan into the Chief Operations Officer role in August of last year. He's got over 30 years experience with BHP, with Newcrest, in Africa, in Australia, in Asia, in North America. He most recently was the CEO, President of Superior Gold. So a fantastically experienced person to be leading up the operations. And then more recently, Steve Mottram joined us in the CFO role. Steve, also a very experienced senior finance exec, most recently was with Noble Group doing trading out of Singapore, but prior to that with NAB in their project finance team. Again, just very experienced in project financing, M&A, capital raise work, which is all obviously directly relevant for ourselves. We've got $47 million cash there at the moment, so we feel we've got the team and the resources to be able to get stuck into the work. And some of our latest news, some of the highlights that I'm going to touch on as we go through this presentation today is just talking about the momentum that we've had in our funding. We've had over $1 billion of conditional debt funding support come in for our Dubbo project in recent months. In addition to that, we have awarded contract for the final engineering to Bechtel Engineering, and we've gotten an additional letter of interest from US Exim to help fund that work up to $32 million US. We have, in parallel with that, continued to do our optimisation work on our flow sheet. So I will cover off some of the successful results we've had on some of the optimisation work that can provide some lower capital pathways for us as we continue to progress Dubbo. And then I also want to touch on some of the progress we're making in our metals plant in Korea as we continue through the product validation processes with the various magnet producers. But this is our metals plant in Korea. I wanted to share a video just so you get a bit of an insight of what we've got there, because I have a lot of people ask me, you know, is this a dirty plant? You know, they have a perception that this is a pretty dirty process in China. I can't speak for how they do it in China, but I can certainly tell you this is a very clean and very first world plant that we have there in Korea. We're very proud of it. We built it in 2021 through a lot of COVID disruption, which had its challenges. We've been in production there delivering NdPr metal to customer since September of 2022. And we are ramping that up at the moment in alignment with the magnet producers coming online. Our first metals customer is a customer in Korea, a small magnet producer there in Korea. But our first alloy customers, that specialist alloy that I spoke about before, is committed to two emerging magnet producers in the US, Novion Magnetics and USA Rare Earths. We're working at the moment with over half a dozen magnet producers, either established or emerging globally, working through their product validation processes. They are quite protracted processes. Some of those processes have been ongoing now for 18 months. You go backwards and forwards with, first of all, doing your ESG and then your laboratory qualifications, and then they'll come and look at what your operational sort of credentials are, but then you start swapping samples, and we are at the point now where with 3 of those customers we're swapping commercial size samples, which is the last step in that validation process before we can move into concluding the commercial arrangements to start delivery. So that's an important milestone for us in this second half as we start to reach that point. We've also been working with numerous oxide providers in the US, in Australia, as well as Europe, to provide the feed so that we can provide a fully alternative supply chain through this facility for our end users. And we'll commit to those offtakes as we commit to the customers, so that we'll keep those in a back-to-back arrangement. In addition to the work that we're doing here at the moment, we've got an installed capacity there of 600 tonne per annum, and we are going to expand that up to 3,600 tonne. But we are also doing the final trial work at the moment on the terbium and the dysprosium metallisation, which will allow us to have commercial production there next year. But Dubbo is the main game for us. It's a polymetallic. We have light rare earths as well as heavy rare earths there, as well as zirconia, hafnia and niobium. They're used in super alloys. They have got defence applications. Hafnia is used in nuclear rods, and increasingly Hafnia is being sought for the emerging semiconductor technologies. So a lot of interest, particularly across the Western countries, for these critical materials across the full breadth of the suite. We have a 20-year reserve there with an additional 50 years of resource already identified. So it is a multi-generational project. It crops its surface. It's very shallow, so it's a very simple mine for us, an open pit. And it is just outside of Dubbo, so regional rather than remote. We're very close to established infrastructure and in the renewable energy zone that New South Wales have there. We are construction ready. We do have all our permits. We have our land and water licences established. We've done 17 years of flow sheet development with ANSTO. It's comprehensively tested. And we are really ready to go. The real challenge for us at the moment is funding, because whilst it throws out an enormous amount of cash once it's up and going, we do have that $1.7 billion upfront capex that we need to raise. So just talking to what some of the recent developments are, we have committed to doing the non-processing infrastructure with Bechtel. They've just completed that work for us, and we have also awarded the processing feasibility contract to them. We're just working with US Exim at the moment on finalising the funding to be able to commence that work, and you can see there on that project timeline that we're planning for that to be completed so we can commence that Bechtel work in the second half of this year. In parallel with that, we have been doing this flow sheet optimisation. We're seeing our peers coming under an enormous amount of capital escalation pressure. We're very conscious of that. And so we want to make sure that we've done our best effort at reducing the CapEx requirement, and any offset that we can do there will be valuable for us. So we're very pleased to have announced just recently that we've had real success with the optimisation work around the Hafnia circuit and the niobium circuit. Both of them we've identified opportunities to simplify those flow sheets and reduce CapEx and OpEx. And we've just commenced a further piece of work to optimise the rare earth circuit. And one of the additional potential benefits of the work that we're looking at with the rare earth options is that it may give us an opportunity to commence in a first phase a rare earth only option, which up until now we've always looked at it as a fully integrated project, but it would be valuable if we were able to do it in steps and give us a lower capital first phase. So that work is all happening in the second half of this year with the intention of moving towards taking final investment decision in the first half of 26 and first production in 28. We do have very strong momentum in the funding around debt. I mentioned at the beginning, we've had a letter of interest in recent months from US Exim for $600 million, as well as a letter from the Canadian EDC. It was 600 million US, the Canadian one is 400 million Aussie, and that's in addition to the letter of support we already have from the EFA for 200 million. So very strong support around the debt. And we're continuing to work with the European and Korean ECAs as well, who are interested in coming in on the back of offtakes going into their jurisdictions. But we really are continuing to have a very strong focus on what the other opportunities are for government funding across these jurisdictions. The Australian government has got the Critical Minerals Facility and the National Reconstruction Fund that are able to provide both debt as well as equity. So we're in discussions with them on with both of them at the moment. As well as I had the opportunity in October last year to be part of the Critical Minerals Roundtable in DC with the Prime Minister and Minister King, and from that we've got very strong momentum, not just the conversations with US Exim, but also with the Department of Defence, looking at funding opportunities under the Title III that was extended to include Australia as a domestic source. So that is the story for ASM. We're building an alternative global supply chain. We're already in production in Korea producing those high-tech metals and alloys. We have very strong government support both here in Australia as well as in other jurisdictions. Our Dubbo project is construction ready. We do already have about $1.5 billion of debt funding to support it, and we are going to continue to look for ways to optimise that flow sheet, optimise our pathway to funding, and deliver on this integrated supply chain. Thanks very much for your time today.